Thank you, Wendy, and welcome to everyone who's joined us on this live presentation and anybody who joins us as a repeat when you want to hear this again, or if you're a premium member and you want to review this. For the live presentation, at the very top of your screen in the Cisco WebEx Event Center, you'll notice that there's several buttons on the right-hand side. One is chat, and if you want to send anything to Wendy or I in case the sound has a problem or the slides don't advance or any type of problem, technical problem, you can put it in there. As well, if you click on the Q&A, you can submit questions that I'll either answer if we have time at the end of the presentation, or I can answer by email if you have additional things. And you can send those directly to everyone or just to me or just to Wendy. So without further ado, I'd like to get started. The top 10 function point uses or software sizing uses in mature software organizations. This picture, I like to use a lot of pictures in my presentations. And I'm gonna start out with something a little bit different. And this is kind of an add-on. I've had people in courses who have said this is actually one of the best parts, in some cases, of project management training, if you can believe that. So did you know that there are 3 learning styles? And we always present dominantly in the learning style that is most comfortable to us. So for example, my learning style is visual. So I like to use things, and this is a sight that I see when I look out of my office window here in Florida, when it's not hurricane season. I see the Sunshine Skyway Bridge in the distance. And so it brings to me peace of mind. And software measurement can bring to your company and to you peace of mind. And it's fact-based management. So what I'd like to just ask you to do, if you can bear with me for a minute, is I'm going to ask you a math question. And I'd like you to just think about what you're doing. So if I ask you to multiply in your head 23 times 45, just start doing it. Just bear with me, just start doing it. So stop. It's not important whether or not you can do math in your head. What is important is what learning style you evoked. So for me, when I think of 23 times 45, I look up. I look up as if there's an imaginary chalkboard in the sky. I learn by visualization, by seeing things. So you'll notice in my presentation there's a lot of clip art, but that may or may not work for you. The second learning style, if you're not a visual person, is audio. That's where if I was very monotone and I went through the entire presentation with no variation in my voice at all, you would have an issue. Audio people learn by saying things over and over. So you might be saying 23 times 45 is actually kind of 20 times 40 or something like that. If your learning style is audio, you'll put a lot of tables, a lot of text in your presentation. The key thing is that we all learn a little bit differently in one of the 3 ways. The third style is kinesthetic or feeling, touching, and that's where use cases and object-oriented language and having focus groups really works well. The reason I bring this up is that when you're doing a presentation, or if you've ever tried to sell software measurement or function points or a new way of doing things to a group at work or even in your personal life, sometimes it doesn't sell well because we're not focusing on all 3 learning styles. So I'm going to try throughout this presentation to address all 3 learning styles. And for those of you that are kinesthetic, you may be taking notes. For those of you that are audio, you may not even be looking at the screen. And for those of you that are visual, the slides are going to make a big difference. So that's one key takeaway right away. For anything that you are trying to market or sell or convince or persuade, try and focus on not only your dominant learning style when you're presenting, but all 3 learning styles of visual, audio, and kinesthetic. So let's get started. This is a presentation that I first did in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, at a major software testing conference back in July. So the top 10 uses of software sizing in mature organizations. So I'd like to talk a little bit about basic function point concepts, and it used to be called purely function point. Now it's called functional size measurement. We'll talk a little bit about that. How does it fit with agile learning or agile software development, which seems to be the dominant way of presenting and developing software today? What are the top 10 uses of functional size measurement or function points by mature organizations? Then I'll do a real quick kind of overview of steps to a sustainable, in other words, realistic measurement program that will solve some of your major software development and estimation problems. And then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. And again, as I had mentioned, if you've got any questions as we go along, I can address those or we can leave them to the end. So feel free to put into the Q&A or into the chat box as you wish. So basic concepts. What is the roots of doing good software measurement, and what does software measurement actually mean? Here's a little bit of a history lesson, and I know this has way too many words to be on the screen, but let's go through it really quickly on a high level. In the 1970s, which I know is before some of you were born, but in the 1970s, Fred Brooks published the Mythical Man Month, where he said, software development, like any type of software or engineering type practice, is limited in some cases by a minimum amount of time. And one of his now politically incorrect statements was, you can't take 9 women for 1 month and create a baby. So to some of you that may seem obvious, but in software development, we cannot condense time down to 1 month to build a major software program or a major software system. So his Mythical Man Month came out in 1975. Alan Albrecht of IBM came out with the first software sizing method that was not lines of code in 1979. And that was the first origins of functional size measurement or function point. Larry Putnam came out with his first parametric estimation. COBOL and Fortran were really some of the only languages that were coming out, and software development lifecycle or SDLC models first started to come out. In the 80s, Barry Beam out of the University of Southern California Sunset Center came out with his software engineering economics in 1981. The International Function Point Users Group was established in 1986, and other metrics groups started to form around the world. 1990s really gave rise to the International Software Organization, or ISO. IEC sets of standards on function points, software sizing, and other areas started to follow suit. Italy became one of the first countries that mandated that public administration, any software development going on in public administration or government, had to use functional sizing or function points to size their software. Brazil and Korea soon followed after. Today, Italy and Brazil, and possibly even Malaysia, actually have legislation in place that requires you to use functional size to size your software development project. We came up with certifications within the International Function Point Users Group, and I currently serve as the Director of Communications and Marketing, and in the late 1990s, I was president of the organization. There's been a lot of growth. The International Software Benchmarking Standards Group, or ISBSG, came into play. Watts Humphrey with the Software Engineering Institute started to formalize some of the software development through managing the software process. And it may be amazing to some of you, but way back in the 1990s, software development was formalized to actually go through requirements, analysis, design, code, test, and implement. Before that, it was pretty much the Wild West. And then in came client server, and then several years ago, actually more than 10, the agile development processes started to make way. In the 2000s, IFPUG and other functional sizing measurements came into play. IFPUG started publishing some books